my friends, are just in time to take a shift, a revolutionary podcast hosted weekly by yours truly, Belinda and Katherine, that will literally alter the trajectory of your life.
We're on a mission to listen, ignite, and transform, challenging ourselves and you, dear listener, to journey deeper and get uncomfortable. Discover what lies beyond those layers of fear, judgment, smallness, and everything else that's been getting in your way up until now. Choose to step into new possibilities and courageously wake up to the life you know you are meant to be living.
So buckle up, Buttercup, summon your curiosity, and together, let's take a shift. Hello, dear listeners. It's Katherine. So happy to be here. And my beloved, hello, Belinda.
Hi, Katherine.
I always say that hello, Belinda. So we've been talking, of course, on our Zoom, unfortunately not together yet. We've been talking, and I was like, let's just record this. Let's just get into this. And Belinda, of course, came across unknowingly the perfect title for this, but we're going to call this podcast, The Only Challenge is when I get the answer I don't want. And I loved it when she said it. I started laughing. I was like, wait, let me write that title down. My only challenge is when I don't get the answer I want. I mean, I was like, that's so brilliant. And you're able to put that into perspective. And we were just talking and we were catching up. We haven't talked in about maybe a week and a half. And we were just talking about the challenges we're faced with in the four walls in which we are existing, trying to come out of those four walls safely in which we've been existing, and then those of us that have been coming out of the four walls and going to the front line and dealing with that while we're watching everyone else come out of the front lines while our numbers are going up. So it's so funny because we really haven't had the answers we've been looking for lately. And that's so reminiscent of everything I'm seeing on the news. That's everything I feel like is going on right now in life. So we want to I was like, let's start recording this. And we were laughing because Belinda goes, I don't know where this will go. And that's usually when we're on the best ride of it all. So we're going to do the podcast when we're going to have the title of The Only Challenge I Have is When I Don't Get the Answer I Want. And, we'll just kind of touch base with you and kind of keep up with from kind of where we've been, because we haven't been recording in a couple of weeks. We've both been very challenged in a lot of ways. And, with me being a frontline healthcare provider in the COVID unit here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, it's been very challenging in the sense of, I feel like it's eat, sleep, repeat. Go to work, come home, sleep, eat, go back to work. And it's been very busy. And one of my doctors who's just, I love more than she's just an amazing person. She caught me going into work one day. She was like, how's it going? And I think, Belinda, I texted you this, where she was talking about the thing that we're dealing with right now, because I was like, I feel like I've slid down Maslow's hierarchy of need from self-actualization in that little top corner where we keep striving, keep seeking. And I feel like in all of this since February, actually, since Caroline's death that rocked my world and my family's world, I feel like I've slidden down all the way down to the lowest rung of Maslow's hierarchy of need of oxygen, because I see so many people starving of oxygen, literally, and oxygen for myself, wearing a mask 12 hours a day, and all of my peer group. And it's so funny. I was like, the breath is everything right now, and that it is the lowest rung of Maslow's hierarchy of need. And shelter, I just want to get home. I don't even want to be here. I want to be home. And then the shelter that everybody's had to be imprisoned in, right? I mean, everybody's had that challenge in a different way. Shelter, and then security. Like, everybody's security and safety has been rocked financially, economically, professionally. And even with me professionally, that has shifted so dramatically in how I work as not just a nurse anesthetist, but as an advanced practice nurse now, caring for these oh so sick COVID patients, along with the ICU nurses and the pulmonologist. And so it's just been everything has come back to the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of need. And so has everybody else's in this world doing their thing during this time. You've been cooped up in Portland, Oregon, and down to your downtown beautiful home, which you probably are like, let me out. But you've been cooped up since March. So, let's just kind of start there and why don't you give us a little insight where you've been in since last couple of weeks and how that's going. And then we'll get into what we were talking about when we're not finding the answers we're really wanting, and how we're dealing with the challenge of not finding the answers we want.
Well, as I shared with you earlier, I feel like we go on this kind of like 3, 4, 5 day cycle where we've got 3, 4, 5 days where this family of 4 and 1,200 square feet is navigating life fairly well. We're in each other's space enough and separate enough to feel like we're having some kind of balance in this just really odd time. And then we reach a day, sometimes sooner, sometimes later in the week, where things just seem to bubble over. And it doesn't really have to be anything, but it's just kind of like, I don't know. It's like if our energies were steam and the steam was just filling up the house and all the windows and doors were shut, at some point the steam is going to start like pushing up against the structure, and some kind of reaction is going to happen. And that's what it feels like. So, it's funny because this getting the answer that I don't want, as we were starting to talk about this, I was thinking like, this has been a really interesting time to examine my expectations for myself, for the kids, for my husband, friends, extended family, clients, of me and me of my clients, my government, right? My country, like even thinking about things that I think I just took for granted before. I just don't think that I was paying a lot of attention. And as I've said all along, at least for me, this has just been this kind of time to really refine like where I put my attention, how I'm thinking about my life, and really, getting back down to that lowest rung of Maslow's hierarchy of needs in a different way. Like, don't feel quite in that kind of survival mode, because I feel like we have the luxury where we don't have to be on the front line. We don't have to put ourselves in dangerous situations every day. We can stay home. But at the same time, I feel like, with school being out and all of us being home, and with work environments being shut down and working from home, and life just became very simple and very minimalist, which just has shown different lessons, I think, and given different opportunities to kind of consider. So that's what's been so fun about watching your experience and watching my experience and sort of comparing the two, which it certainly doesn't represent everyone's experience on the planet, but it does represent sort of like two portions of the population and kind of two different points of view.
And both of them being forced.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is simply, when you say it like that, it sounds like a Martha Stewart recipe for that yummy unctuousness of whatever she's going to make, right? When you say it like, of course, you always have a way with words, but when you say it like that, it's like, oh yeah, this damn thing has been forced down our throats, shoved down our throats, and continues to be so, right? Then we continue to see, yes, wear masks, no, don't wear masks, and the rallies and everything that goes on with that, and then, at Caroline's Children's Hospital, when this thing completely began, of course, they were seeing, like every other children's hospital, non-accidental trauma surge like you do in the summertime when kids are home. So, that was surging in March, when kids were home from school and they were around their parents 24/7 in that box they call the house, whatever that is. Some of them not getting food because they went to school and that was their one meal or two meals, whatever, that they got some kind of food. And so everything that we are going through has been forced upon us by this virus, right? And everybody is navigating, and we haven't had any of the answers we really wanted. So to be simplistic and to find, a slow time, because everybody wants a slow time, but we don't want it like this. We want it when we want it. We want it like we want it. I want what I want when I want it. And, COVID said, you'll get what you got when I give it to you, and we don't like that. And so all of this has been forced upon us, and we don't like that either. We Americans don't like that either. And then we don't have the toilet paper to go with it, for God's sakes. And that created a whole new revolution. I still can't find soft scrub. I'm like, what's going on? So, everything has changed, and we have been forced to, like we were talking about, we have been forced to adapt to a new way of being, and we're still going to be forced to adapt to a new way of being in the coming years. There's been two shifts in my life. Of course, one was 9/11 and the other one was 2020 for COVID. Mine is double. Caroline suicide February the 19th, and then starting in March when it started really in the United States and when we really started. So those are two big ways that our world we've been forced to redesign and resign the world that we knew. But I think there's a lot of great things that can come out of that. But there's a lot of suffering that comes with the transition of change too. Right? And I think that's what we're getting to when we're like, start recording today. And that's where we get into the suffering. The suffering part of not having things the way we want them, not having the answers the way we want to hear them, and finding ourselves with the pain of all of that, and the pain of what used to be, and the pain of what could be but isn't.
Well, that's really interesting. I keep repeating to myself that, what we're experiencing these last months, and certainly the discomfort and the trauma that many families in the world are experiencing, they were already experiencing before COVID. There were still a lot of really atrocious things happening on the planet. So I think what's been interesting about this is I just keep thinking that it's like a magnifying glass, right? Or is that what it's called? A magnifying glass?
Yeah.
That just has magnified for each of us, whatever we were experiencing before, we're just experiencing it under a magnifying glass now. And so I think it's interesting, there's no question that we all feel that COVID-19 is an imposition, right? It absolutely feels like if we could choose something else, if we could snap our fingers and say, be gone with you, we would choose that. But as we have said in many podcasts before, and as we talk about all of the time, we may not choose the circumstances in which we're living, but how we respond to them, we're choosing, right? And so I think that there's this other side of it, which is something had to give. The kind of climate conversations that we've been having in recent months, recent years, but certainly it felt like that something was going to explode, right? Things were, whether it's the election of 2020 or maybe going to war, or right, there was an energy that was already happening. And I think we could call it COVID-19, but I almost wonder, could it have been, what would it have been like if it had been, we had gone to war, was it Iran, like potentially going to war in Iran, or if impeachment had happened, then what would have, you know what I mean? Like, so we have this situation, and I think because it's this collective experience, it's not individual, where we can say, well, that person or that community or that city or that country is having this experience, but we're having this experience on this global level, that it's feeling like this blanket that just covered the planet, and that we're all kind of trying to, peek out from underneath and sort of figure out, right? Like, how do we live with this now? I don't know, there's just something about, I think, from, even though I've had a lot of discomfort, and even though I've had struggle, and even though I've had a couple of really awful fights with my husband during this time, I have to admit, I can't help but see it as a gift. Like, I can't help but see it as this opportunity. I can't help it. Like, and I'm not trying to be Pollyannish about it. Because I just believe that something this big, that is affecting the whole planet, feels bigger than any individual person or country or continent. And I don't know, is there suffering? Absolutely. Is there struggling? Absolutely. And with any transition, as you said, this is just part of the deal. Like, that's part of the deal. A transition naturally has these components. So even with the COVID-19, are we really struggling? On one hand, there are individuals who are absolutely struggling with that. But what are we struggling more with? The actual having the disease, having the illness? The majority of us? No. I think we're struggling more with how we had to make adjustments and our resistance to not having the answer that we want, right? Make this go away. That's the answer that we want. It's gone. It's going to be gone. In 2 weeks, life is going to turn back to normal. That's what we're really struggling with.
Well, exactly. And like, I want to go back to your point of managing the expectation through this, because, I found myself feeling guilty for only eat, sleeping, working, and repeating, because I know that this is, I call it humanity's reset. I know that generations and generations before us have gone through the plague and the Spanish flu, and like, everybody's had experienced this, right? We always said it would be chemical warfare to some degree, or virus, right? This is another war. This is another war. We just can't see what we're fighting. And so when we can't see that, it feels like we have to make it about something we can see. So that will be somebody I can see. So that will be you, or whoever gets in my way, or whoever tells me to wear a mask, or whoever tells me to go the same direction in the John Brown grocery line with the lanes, right? Like people are just, and I feel it too. I mean, it's almost like we have no reserve left to deal with people, in the sense of what we look around and what we disagree with. And granted, that's a judgment. All I can take care of is myself, right? Like, all I can take care of is me, and how I react to how I feel about what's going on outside of me, and then how I react to what's going on inside of me. And when I was talking to one of my anesthesiologists when I was going into work one night, she was talking about managing the expectation. And I told her, I think I even texted you that night, and she had said it brilliantly. And I don't think she'll ever know how these words really, really were like salve to my soul. But she said, sometimes you just should not have an expectation. Like, sometimes in the midst of like this, managing the expectation is not having an expectation. You just do what you have to do to make it through. But to me, that brought some feelings of, oh, in January, I used to be here looking at the next several months and the next year that would provide these things and would maybe open these doors. And then even with the podcast, and we said we were not attached to it, right? We were not attached to the outcome. We said that in December when we started this podcast. We were not attached to any outcome or wherever it went. We would just have fun and see where it went. And I haven't been applying that to my life. I'm not really driving right now. I'm just I'm in for the ride on this thing because, I'm working. I've been socially isolating, of course, and like everybody else. And I just feel like I'm the rider, not the driver. And sometimes I think that has to be okay too. It's just like 2 years ago or last year, the first 6 months of last year, where it was okay for me not to be withdrawn and to be contracted and to stay. I self-isolated then, basically. I could still go to the grocery store without a mask, and that felt better than this does. But right now I'm in this. And so, like last night I had a conversation. We were talking about this with, my mom and my stepdad, and they're older. I just turned 55, so you do the math. They're older. They took their motor coach and went up to the mountains and went out to dinner, and I flipped out. Like the restaurant was, yes, socially distanced, waiters wore a mask. I just flipped out. My dad went into a store without a mask on, and I flipped out. I was crying. I was like, we just had the highest number of admissions in the last 24-hour period at our hospital where I work in the ICU, and I flipped out. I was crying. I was like, I don't want you to die. Why, you've got to take precautions. There was no magic window that we went through or date that said, oh, you don't have to wear a mask anymore. I mean, I know we're all tired of it. I get it. But I just flipped out. And then I got off the phone and I was talking to Caroline, and I was like, I got to let this go. If they die from COVID or they die from something else, it's their choice. They're grown adults. They're just two retired people kicking around trying to see a different view and not live in a fear bubble. And I just have to let that go. Because I said, and I was like, Mom, I'm down here in Dallas. I see how hard people can't even breathe. But, I was going off on it. And my mom was very gentle and very kind with it. And my mom's going to do what she's going to do too. She's perfected in her, 70th some year. She's perfected that. And it's not my place to change it. It's my place on how I react to it. And I have to let that go because I can't sit here and worry about them in North Carolina. Right. And so, we were just kind of talking about that because what they were telling me was nothing I wanted to hear. Because I was like, we just lost Caroline. We don't want to lose you too. I was down that rabbit hole of, and so that's not the way I want to respond. What happens if, something else, a more natural something happens, and what am I going to get mad at that too? I don't know. It was just kind of crazy. I found myself thinking, well, that was kind of a crazy reaction, and I just couldn't stop.
Well, I think that this whole idea, again, coming back to expectation, is like, I wonder if we're going to start having some other kind of different experience with that, because I do feel we always talk about this dance and we always talk about this balance, right? It's none of the concepts that we explore around are like, even if we say I'm 100% responsible for my experience, for example, does that mean that and nothing anybody's doing around me is impacting that experience? Of course not. Like, the people around us do have impact on our experience. So what does 100% responsible for our experience all the time mean, right? And then we can kind of go down that rabbit hole. I think that the opportunity here is to be thinking about what were the things that we expected that we weren't even conscious that we were expecting. For example, pandemic, that everybody's going to behave in a way that's going to be mindful, not just of their own health and well-being, but everybody's health and well-being. I think that is an expectation many of us had before this happened. And what we are finding You just have to turn on the news to watch people who are deciding to go out and not wear masks, or companies that are opening and then 2 days later they're closing. You know what I mean? So I think this question of expectation, just that word, like, and everything we talk about in this podcast is really for us and for listeners to take away from and just think about that for a while. What were the things that I had expectations about that I didn't even realize I had expectations about? And now I'm feeling anger, sadness, frustration because I'm getting the answer I don't want. I thought people were just going to be smart. And my definition of smart is this. And people aren't doing that. And therefore my expectation isn't met. And how do I sit with that? How do I live in this world, in this social world that I want to be social in and I want to be in relationship with people in, when people don't behave the way that I want them to behave?
Right. I mean,
COVID was an issue, and post-COVID is going to be an issue.
It's a different disease. It's a totally different disease.
And we think it makes sense in the time of COVID. Like, we could say reasonable people would behave like X.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is that my definition of a reasonable person isn't the same as the next person's definition of a reasonable person. And that is part of what is the challenge, I think, of navigating our existence on the planet. Is right?
Right. Exactly. And then let's go back to, like you said, the word expectation. And the only person that I can take, that I can control, and the only thing I can control is me and my reactions, right? Me, my actions, reactions. And so maybe we go to, because if the answer you're getting is not the answer you're wanting, then 99% of the time there's going to be a lot of suffering in the moment. Whether it's stress or anxiety, or even for the people that manipulate people, it's going to be, how am I going to make this happen like I want? You know what I like how am I going to make this be what I want to be? I'm going to shove that square peg in that round hole and make it to because I need to control this. And so it creates a lot of stress for anybody that doesn't get the answer they want. It's going to create a lot of suffering, a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety. And I guess how do we make it okay not to get the answers we want? And then how do we keep ourselves, or do we let ourselves suffer? I mean, what's the key, especially in these moments? Like, these are new moments, right? Like, these are new times for us. So what's the better path? If you could just tell me that, Belinda, what's the best path for me to, we'll turn this into one of your client counseling sessions. But if you could just tell me that, that'd be great. Like, how is it okay for me to manage my expectations of not expecting anything right now and allow that to be okay, and then have me to be okay with what I'm seeing, not only in my family, but in the streets and in the world and in society and in my job? Because what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing is really nothing that I want to see and hear and be right now. Because I don't want to wear a mask 24/7. I want to be able to hug people. I'm dying. I'm dying. The extroverted people are out there dying because we have not had any human contact, and we need it. You know, I have a very good friend that's extroverted, and she's like, we've trained for this our whole life. And she goes, but I'm even having a little problem with it. So I'm like, I know when the introverts are having problems. I'm like, well, the extroverts are dying off as we speak, because I need to talk to people.
I know.
So how do we, the whole reason we hit the record button on this, which was just our conversation and our catch-up time, which is always how podcasts are created for us, is we're not getting the answers we want right now. And we're probably not going to do it as we adapt. So tell me how I'm not going to suffer through this, or should I be suffering through this? Is this going to be the fire that I walk through? to create the new, melt and create and burn the gold of the new me. Like, what is it?
Well, I'm going to tell you number one, we got to feel what we're feeling. Number one, like no shoulds, right? You're disappointed that you wanted a day off from work because you need an extra break and they needed you at work and you don't want to go to freaking work, right? And then you're going to feel that and like, or, my kids are bored and because they had, 20 minutes of school today and it's like, they just want somebody to humor them, right? Entertain them. And I have 15 things on my schedule to do today. And it's like, and my feeling in that moment is exasperation and frustration, right? And so I think the first thing is to really feel what we're feeling. And it's not the basis of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but maybe it is to a certain degree. Like to get to self-actualization, we've got to be in our bodies and we've got to be connected to what we're experiencing, to experience something different. And I think right now, I think a lot of us don't want to be experiencing what we're experiencing because we're experiencing a lot of discomfort and frustration and anger and et cetera. So I think it's almost like the more we resist the experience that is very present for many of us right now, the more it persists, right? What we resist persists.
Right.
So I think that's the number one thing is, as you kept saying, like, is it okay for me to not have expectation about myself right now, to not be planning, to not be organizing, to not be working on those projects that I was supposed to have done by now, to not be right, to just to feel the discomfort of letting those things go is part of what I'm hearing, you need to do, is to allow yourself to say to yourself, I can let it go, and then feel the feeling of that, because I think that's the thing that we're trying to avoid. It's right, by continue to have that expectation and sort of beat ourselves up about it, is almost so that we don't have to feel maybe the grief of letting things go. And I can tell you, my daughter's graduating from middle school right now. My second to oldest stepchild is graduating from college right now. There are big disappointments there that they don't get to have those rites of passage and share them with family and friends and their school communities. So, and they've got to feel it, right? And it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for them. And it's also uncomfortable for the people in their presence because we don't want to see them suffer. Because that also makes us suffer a bit. It hurts me to see my kids unhappy, right? So I think the first thing is to really allow those feelings to come forward. And when you cried because you heard about your mom and your stepdad making these choices and they felt like choices that could potentially put them in harm's way, you cried because you don't want them to be in harm's way. Of course you don't. And because everything feels more heightened, you feel a heightened sense of survival mode right now. And you want to make sure that everybody's okay. That is your job, literally. That is your job, is to make sure people are okay. So when you hear people around you making those choices, it may be, I feel angry and that's why I yelled at them, but really it was because I care about them and I want them to be safe. And that's my mama bear kind of reaction. And so to cry like that and have that strong reaction is just like, it's okay, right? It's okay.
Yeah, I'm a 55-year-old woman on the phone crying to my mother, I don't want you to die. I don't want,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little girl crying that, and you said, like, I wrote down avoid or adapt.
Yeah.
And maybe, like, sometimes avoidance is adaptation. Like, it is okay to feel it. It is okay to have that. But how do we move through it? Not past it. How do we move through it? And then avoid, adapt, allow. I guess we're on the A words today. Right?
So I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it's just like, I'm really wanting, I guess I'm really wanting the key, how to use, in this, because I'm tired of feeling. Yeah. We've all been forced to feel, and I'm a feeler. I love to feel, but damn it, I'm tired of feeling right now. Like what I'm feeling. I want to feel the other things that I know is the Martha Stewart recipe that creates the unctuousness and the yumminess for the outcome. Because this outcome is not yummy yet, even though there are many gifts. Like I've seen many gifts come, like when you were talking about graduation, and you see it on Facebook and Instagram where the families are creating their own little, and drive-by birthdays and things like that. Like we're creative, but that's not enough for me to feel good yet.
Well, that's very interesting what you just said. So you want to feel good. If
Please.
the goal is to feel good,
we all do. Yes, please.
So then
yes.
there's two other things that come to mind for me. There's no better example than having teenagers who, without COVID-19, are riding the roller coaster during those years, right? Their best friend loves them. Their best friend hates them. They have a boyfriend. They break up with the boyfriend. They didn't get the grade they wanted, and they're experiencing everything tenfold, right? Their brain is just extra sensitized, the extra sensory, however it works, which is, I think, as you were saying, especially for those of us who might consider ourselves empathic and already feel heightened sense, we're really feeling it. And then the average person is also really feeling it. So in a way, maybe we all have kind of the sensory systems of teenagers right now. And we're all in these kinds of like extreme modes, right? So feeling, being in the presence of teenagers and allowing them to feel what they feel and sit with them. Remember what they say, like a feeling lasts like a minute and a half, and maybe we're just having one after the other. Right. So we need a little pause in between so we can complete a feeling. But I guess the word for me that keeps coming up in the back of my mind is resilience, that this is actually teaching us to navigate difficult feelings so that we can get to the other side. I was reading this Khalil Gibran quote that I thought would be great to start a podcast with, that talks about suffering, sorrow, and joy being two halves of a heart, two sides of a coin. That actually, the more suffering, the more sadness, the more sorrow we experience, the more expansive our hearts are to experience joy, and vice versa. That this is all part of the human experience. So I think maybe before resilience comes redefining again what is good. Like when you say, I want to feel good, you want to move into that joy. But part of moving into that joy is not judging what we're feeling right now as bad.
Yeah. And that's where I've been, I guess, is just judgment over everything, right? Like just so much judgment of, just so much judgment. And you're right. Like I would have avoid, anger, adapt, and then allow, like all these, like I just keep writing these A words down, but you're right. I have a teenager's brain right now in the sense that I just want to feel good. I just want it to feel better now.
Which, by the way, is also a 2-year-old's brain. I want it now.
A lot of 2-year-olds walking around and no, I'm not going to do that. And they're in the form of 70-some-year-old parents not wearing a mask and, going in to get an apple, whatever.
You can't make me.
Right. And the thing is I can't. You are a grown adult creating your own reality. And nobody wants to live in a fear bubble. Even when I go see it every day, I don't want to go home and I'm tired of it. Like I'm telling you, there have been times like it takes so much to come out of it, like get a shower before you leave for work. Make sure your shoes are sprayed off. Make sure that you've done. There's so many steps to this. At some point, I'm like, screw it. I'll just take the Corona. Just so tired of it. And I get it. Even where I see it, I'm like, well, none of us were guaranteed life. What if this is we've all had those conversations in our head, probably with our family. So I just want to be an allowance of it to where it's all okay And the only thing that I have response for and to is my own well-being, not just physically. I mean, even, that is the only thing I'm protecting, because I don't feel like I'm doing any spiritual work, and yet I am, right?
Just
Because
showing up is your spiritual work right now.
yeah, exactly. But not but. Yeah, I just went right to but on that one. But I mean, however, damn it. However, remember that one call podcast we had that every time I tried to say something, I couldn't say it because I wanted to say but I just want to feel better now, damn it. And so, like, even this podcast makes me feel better now because, you're with me. I don't know how many people are listening, but you're with me, and at least I'm not alone when you're with me.
That's
So,
right.
right? So, it is it is just allowing it to be and realizing it's not it's remember how Ron used to say, you cannot get in the way of someone else's spiritual journey. You can't. And how did he used to say that? Like, it's not part of your process.
Is it maybe allow people the dignity of their own experience?
Yes, it is. That's exactly it. Oh, this is another millionth reason why I love you. But yes, the dignity of their process. And I'm not gonna get in the way of my mother with the dignity of her process of living out her life. She's got the same information I do, and she has a little more because her daughter works in the COVID unit. So by God, if I can tell you the stories I tell you of what I'm seeing, and you're still out there eating chicken parm and buying candied apples, and more power to you, sister. I mean, that's how I gotta be. Even
Mhm.
though it would just devastate me if something happened, but I've been devastated before. I was devastated February the 19th. Right? We've been devastated a lot recently.
Mhm.
Not just in death, but the death of how we knew things to be.
Yeah.
The
And
death of our lives.
I think this is, and that's why I keep saying it's an opportunity filled with struggle and strife and frustration and aggravation and anger. And our work, I think everyone's work, is to find a way to hold non-judgmental space for it all.
And
That is
healing
it.
ourselves.
Yeah. Like, I observe, I note, I instead of judging, I discern. Is that an action I choose to make for myself? Is that a thought I choose to have for myself? Um, and then I choose, right? I choose my actions, I choose my thoughts, I choose my words, and really I choose my experience then, regardless of what's happening outside of me. And I think that's resilience. And I think that maybe, if we're all teenagers right now with these heightened emotional sensory systems, then maybe we're all just getting this really, really big lesson in resilience.
Right. And we're not learning it the way we like to learn. Because we like to learn in the sunshine. This is not the sunshine.
I mean, I don't know. For me, I don't learn in the sunshine. I'd like to be in the sunshine learning. I learn in the trenches. I learn in the dark. I don't know about learning in the sunshine for me. I
Well,
wish it were easier.
right. Well, I mean, I get that, but we just wish this was easier. I do. I
Well,
wish it was
sure.
easy. I wish it was a lot easier. But I do get in the sense of, I mean, there's kind of a breath with this and having this conversation of, I have to allow it. And I don't have to allow the suffering that can keep attaching with it. I think I have to, like what you were saying, you acknowledge, you recognize that you are suffering and the feelings that you're feeling, and maybe it's not so much suffering as it is sadness. That's a form of suffering. Whatever, you're sad about it, you're scared, you're fearful, and then just allowing those to be. And it may take a while, right? Like with people that have lost their jobs, this is going to take a while, probably. But I do know that there's a lot of things coming out of this, even near me, and what I'm seeing, even at the hospital and around my set of friends, even my family, seeing that. And I have to tell you, I was a little jealous that my mom got to go to a restaurant. Right? Because I haven't been to a restaurant. I love going to restaurants. I love it. And I haven't been. Like, I just want to go sit down at a restaurant. I'll have to tell you a funny story. We got Chinese takeout last night. And so I was like, let's try some new dishes. And we'll have leftovers so that we'll have a couple of meals. So we tried like a new dish, and it was called crispy noodles something. I can't remember. Well, it was another thing I was not happy about, because it came and I was like, I don't know how to put this together. Is this sauce go with this? Or is this chicken go with this? Like, I started laughing because I was like, I can't even have takeout because I don't know how it all goes together. I need a picture. I don't cook, so I was like, this is why we go sit down. We have community, we have communion. And then somebody tells us how it's supposed to be on our plate, because I didn't know what to do with the damn crispy noodles. I was just like, what are these? So I don't know. It's just so funny. And I think we're just spinning wheels here. And it's so funny that nobody's getting the answers. The challenge is when we get the answers that we don't want. And I think that was brilliant, because we're all living in our day-to-day existence, more than likely, where we're turning on the news, or we're looking at our families, or we're looking at our kids, or we're looking at our jobs, and we're getting the answers we don't want.
And I would say one thing more about expectations is, I know for me, because I love going to restaurants too, right? That was our weekly date night. We haven't had a date night in 3 months. It's hard when you're 24/7 in your house with your family. I know our friend Erica, who was on a podcast with us some time back, she somehow creates date night with her husband. We haven't managed to do it in our house. But this question of expectations and the things that gave me pleasure, what I thought gave me pleasure, how I organized my life before, I think again, it's this opportunity to really, like, was it really going out to dinner? And for some of us, it may be, yes, it was really going out to dinner. Or was it time away from the kids that was the key thing? Or was it a set date on the calendar every week that was really the thing? To ask us again to kind of consider a little bit more carefully, because what if most restaurants don't reopen? Like, what if this was the new normal, right? What if? Then how would we meet that need? And I think that is really how we started the conversation to begin with, which was, we really suffer when we have an expectation that there's only one way to meet this need. That my sister behaves in a certain way, that your parents behave in a certain way, that my kid behaves in a certain way, that this restaurant is open because that's my favorite restaurant. Like that need can only be met by that person or by that situation, versus if my need is to feel connection, well, then there's a million ways that I can feel that. It doesn't have to come from one specific person in one specific way, right? If my need is to feel special, or what's the need you would say that going out to dinner meets for you?
First of all, I don't have to cook. Second of all, it gets me out. I get to be around people.
Community.
Community. Sometimes drink, yeah, when I go to a really good restaurant or whatever. But it's just that, I don't know, it's just that sense of being connected to a lot of things greater than myself, right? Like,
so what if your best friend started cooking you a meal every Thursday night, and you had dinner at their house and they made the meal for you? Would that meet the need?
That would meet the need. What time do you want me? Yeah, I mean, it would meet the need, but Kevin, I can't even go out. It's like, man. I mean, it would meet the need, and it's been fun cooking here at the house to some degree. It's not one of my favorites, but it has been fun cooking here at the house. And, I've got my espresso machine, so I'm learning how to pull a shot. I've just ordered this cloche thing, And it is where you smoke crafted cocktails, and we're learning about bitters, and you smoke meats like with applewood chips or whatever. So that's coming in the door, and I ordered a little handmade looking chess game, because we're going to learn how to play chess. Like, we play backgammon all the time, and on one side is backgammon, the other side is chess. And we're going to learn how to play chess, I guess, with our crafted cocktail and smoked meats. I'll probably play chess better being drunk.
Look at how well you're adapting.
allow this new time and adapt. So yeah, I mean, it's fun because, yeah, I mean, there are great things coming from this, and I think this is a great reminder. This is a great reminder for me, and it's like a breath of fresh air of, oh yes, I'm waking up to this again, right? Like, I just looked down at some of my notes, and I just looked down at what we had talked about. We've been talking about reorientation and reorganization. That was 2 big words we had in January, and I don't think we knew how big this was going to be. Right? I just laughed when I saw him while you were talking. I was like, oh my God, because we were really, and this is where we are. You know, like, you are in the middle of so much reorganization, reorientation, and I know in your life, and you'll talk about that sometime later. And I just think that's yes to all of it. Yes, and it, like, I can breathe now, right? Like, it's better. It's better having this connection with you, even though we're recording this podcast, because this is just me and you, as it always is. It's like me going out to dinner, right? Like, this is, yes, I'm okay. You're reflecting back to me. It's all okay. And this is just the remembering of, this is part of the process. This is what part of the process on the planet right now, right? Because it is. How do we know? Because the thing speaks for itself. It is what it is. But I still want what I want when I want it. And the universe says you'll get what I got when I get it, or when I give it to you.
And so it goes. And so it goes.
All right. So I think we're probably pretty good coming through that one, but that's just one of my favorite. The only challenge is when I don't get the answer I want. So right. I love this, and I love you dearly, and it's so good to reconnect, and I feel a lot more alive right now.
Yeah.
Right? So that's what it's all about.
That it sure is. And I wanted to say to all of our listeners, thank you for hanging in there with us. That we really promised ourselves we would have a podcast every week, and we had a little break there, and I think we are back stronger, remembering that really all it takes is that first step of connecting, right, and showing up. And that is more than enough, I think, for all of us to be doing right now, is just show up.
Show up. Just being there. Yeah, show up. Exactly. Mm-hmm. And that's a good thing for us, right? Just to show up, because every time I show up with you, I'm stronger for it.
Yep.
Every time I show up for me, I'm a lot stronger for it.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. I love you.
I love you too. Thanks everybody for listening. Remember, you can always find us at takeashiftnow.com, and we will be with you again next week.
See ya.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Take a Shift, a part of Mental Health News Radio Network. We are so grateful for your time and presence. Always remember, you're just one shift away from a better feeling day in your life. Until next time, remember to listen, ignite, and transform. Much love from us to you.